They obviously wanted to attack you a lot defensively. They did not have much success doing that. You know they're trying to make you work as hard as possible on that end. What do you think of that challenge? And what does that do just in terms of cranking up your competitive juices?
That's fine. I accept it. It gets me going on the offensive end too. So they don't want to attack me. That's fine. I think I played good defense today. So just gotta stay locked in.
Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. My name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, like and comment on the video and subscribe also. And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Got to get you ready for game number 3 between the Mavericks and the Clippers in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs, with the series tied at 1 game apiece after the Mavericks got a huge game 2 win, 96-93, thanks to their defense and the way that they were able to shut down the Clippers for only 93 points in game 2, as the Mavericks look to take a 2-1 series lead on Friday night before they play game 4 on Sunday. And for the Mavericks, a win that they got even in the return of Kawhi Leonard for the Los Angeles Clippers, a huge confidence boost for them, not only getting the split in Los Angeles, but now coming home to a Dallas Mavericks crowd that's ready to welcome them into the AAC and provide a lot of energy in that building. Should be an incredible atmosphere at the AAC on Friday night to hopefully help this Mavericks team, give them the confidence that they need to get a huge Game 3 win. And more importantly, as we start to look toward Game 3 and what the Mavericks and Clippers will be looking to present, it's going to continue to be about the physicality, which has taken on quite the narrative in this series. We've seen how the NBA officiating has changed throughout the course of the second half of the year, allowing more contact, allowing more physicality. And as Jason Kidd has talked about throughout the course of the second half of this season and into the first couple of games of this series, the Mavericks have embraced that and have taken on the challenge of being the aggressor on defense. And you saw that particularly in game 2, which started in the second half of game 1. They were able to carry that momentum that they were building based off of their good play in the second half and take that into game 2, where you saw the Mavericks holding the Clippers to just 19 points in the first quarter. And in fact, you look at the game itself, the Mavericks were able to continue to get after James Harden in particular, thanks to the defense of Luka Doncic. And you heard it in our opening clip coming into the podcast. The defense that Luka Doncic provided has taken on a life of its own, particularly as it happened in game number 2, where you saw the stat from ESPN Stats and Info that Luka, as the primary defender, held his opponent to just 2 of 17 from the field and a total of 5 points. James Harden only having 3 points when Luka was his primary defender. And for Luka, that is what all of this is about, setting the tone for this team on both ends of the floor and what that means for how the rest of the team will operate. While Luka is obviously not the best defender on this team, his effort, even when he's having to carry the offensive load, allows his teammates to feel good about what they have to do, and they have to respond in kind to what Luka's doing on the defensive end. In fact, I want you to take a listen to Maxi Kleber, who spoke to the media on Thursday about what Luka Doncic's defense means to this team, and even with 80% effort on that defensive end, how it helps this team be able to have that much more confidence that they can execute what they have to on the defensive end as well.
Great timing, anticipates what guys want to do, knows the tendencies. So, he's a very high IQ player and therefore can challenge that also when he's on the weak side, understands where to be. So I think he puts himself in a great position. Obviously, he takes a big he has the ball on offense for us all the time, so that's tiring too. So he will not be able to put the same effort on the defensive side all the time. But, if you get it like 80% of the time, whatever, that's a big step because it helps everybody else. But just his IQ helps him a lot on the defensive side. And I think right now he shows what he's capable of and what he's doing. And, sometimes there's like one play that will be picked out where he maybe missed something, but that's just normal. You know, everybody has mess ups during a game. It's a long game, and he plays the most minutes. So obviously, sometimes it's going to happen, and people want to pick it out. But overall, I think he's a very smart defender, is in the right positions, and that helps the team.
So you can see and hear from Maxi how important Luka Doncic's effort is on the defensive end to give them what they're able to do, in describing Luka as a very smart defender who understands his assignments. And you saw that be able to happen in game number 2. And that, for me, as I start to turn my attention toward game 3, want to see more of the offensive, not only effort that Luka and Kyrie put forward on that end, obviously, but more importantly on the defensive end, continuing to be the aggressors in attacking James Harden, Paul George, yes, Kawhi Leonard, and the entirety of this defense led by P.J. Washington, who, of course, is going to have the primary assignments on guys like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But it's going to be up to Luka and Kyrie to continue to push that message and execute on the defensive end to allow this team to overall play the better defense that they've been playing, especially what you saw in game number 2. More on this as we get you ready for game 3 of the Western Conference playoffs between the Mavericks and the Clippers in the first round. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Thank you for hanging out with us at that quick break, and thank you to today's sponsor of our video and our podcast in Aura as we get you ready for game 3 of the first round of the Western Conference playoffs between the Mavericks and the Clippers after the Mavericks got the 96-93 win in game 2 as they get ready for games 3 and 4 on Friday and on Sunday. And what we were talking about before we went to break is the defensive tone that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving set in game 2. Kyrie Irving's defense on James Harden as he was able to help this defense continue to play extremely well. We know that during the second half of the year, in their most meaningful games, when they went 16-2 during that 18-game run, the Mavericks were the number 1 defense in the NBA. And if you're a fan of this team and have watched this team throughout the course of the year and what you've seen so far in the postseason, that defensive improvement that you saw during the second half of the year is no mirage. And they were able to continue that in game 2. Now, things may be a little bit more difficult in game number 3. Daniel Gafford, who had to leave the game and didn't play much in the second half at all in game 2, is questionable for Friday's game with a sore back. Tim Hardaway Jr. has already been ruled out for game 3 with his ankle sprains. So that means more is going to be on the shoulders of Derek Lively II, because if they are not able to have Daniel Gafford for game number 3, that means Lively is going to be back into the starting lineup for this Mavericks team, and the depth is going to be tested for them in their front court, where Maxi Kleber was able to play well in game 2. But part of what has made the Mavericks so good during the second half of the year is the ability to use both Gafford and Lively in tandem in the middle to be able to have the kind of defense that you need to protect the rim on that side of the floor. Without Gafford, you're going to be missing a big piece of that. You say, Kevin, Gafford has kind of struggled a little bit so far in this postseason and struggled a little bit down the stretch as well. Even still with that, another big body in the middle is needed against a Clippers team that can be physical as well and can present size of their own in the front court. So if Gafford is not able to go in game number 3, that's going to be a big miss for the Mavericks. That means more of Derek Lively and what he will be able to do, who was really good in game number 2. He will see more of that. And for him, it's going to be crucial because we saw him be a starter throughout the course of the year. So that moment shouldn't necessarily be too big for him. He's already now had a couple of games of postseason action to start to understand the playoff intensity and what that looks like. And then he'll be maybe starting at home. That will make him that much more comfortable, even in the midst of everything that he's going through right now. Derek Lively being able to start at center in game 3, if need be, at home, should give him a big confidence boost to be able to continue to do the things that he's capable of in terms of his rim running, but more importantly on the defensive end, closing out possessions with defensive rebounding and altering and blocking shots to help be the anchor on the back end to help erase things that may happen in front of him on the perimeter. So that's something else to look out for going into game number 3. And one thing that the Mavericks were able to withstand was the return of Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard went 7 of 17 in game 2, where he played nearly 35 minutes in that game, had the 15 points, was a -8. You saw in that third quarter a little bit him start to get a little bit more aggressive. Ty Lue talked about that on Thursday when he met with us for media availability on how he was able to get his legs under him somewhat in that third quarter. His overall effectiveness wasn't there necessarily on the offensive end, but defensively was able to get into passing lanes. As you remember, he had 4 steals in game 2. How Kawhi Leonard responds playing his first game since March 31st that he did in game 2, and then coming back for another game 3 with a couple of days of rest, and how aggressive he will be on the offensive end is another thing that we'll start to look out for as well. And as he was able to get some shots up during practice on Thursday, as you can see, some light shooting as he was able to get some work in before practice and during practice as well. Kawhi Leonard and the way that he's going to be playing in game number 3 is going to tell us a lot about what the tone and the tenor of this series could look like moving forward for the Los Angeles Clippers. So just another thing to continue to keep watch for when it comes to the Mavericks and how they defend Leonard, especially knowing how much he likes to get into the mid-range and be able to attack the rim as well, but also what that can mean for the Mavericks on the offensive end with Kawhi Leonard's defense, knowing how physical he can be, how good of a defender that he is, and how much more the Mavericks will make him work. Because one of the things that Jason Kidd talked about going into game 2 with the return of Leonard was, look, we're going to make him work on the defensive. We're going to test that knee to see how well he can hold up in a playoff situation, playing 35 minutes with no contact. And for the most part, he held up, but you could tell the jump shot wasn't necessarily there. It wasn't a lot of lift on his jump shot throughout the course of the game. That should be a much better thing for the Clippers if you're anticipating that from that side based off of what they want to do with him. But for the Mavericks, it's going to continue to be about playing physical on the defensive end, getting into Kawhi Leonard, getting into Paul George, and more importantly into James Harden as well. You saw in game 1 as he was able to facilitate and find guys, whether it be breaking guys down off the dribble on the defensive end, finding Russell Westbrook in the corner for a 3, being able to hit his step back as well. James Harden, as I said, coming into this series is the X factor for the Clippers, because when he's scoring, when he's passing and finding other guys, that opens up a lot more things, and you have to commit more resources to trying to defend James Harden. But again, you give Kyrie Irving credit for the way that he defended Harden. James and Luka Doncic is the same on the defense that he had on James Harden as well. And one thing that I loved about game 2 that I want to see continue to carry over into game 3 was how personal this Mavericks defense took what happened to them in game 1, was able to improve in game 2 and clean things up from a rotation standpoint, but more importantly, executing on that end to make things uncomfortable for the Clippers. The Clippers were the number 4 offensive rated team in the NBA this season. And one thing that they love to do is to shoot the ball from 3. They shoot the ball at 38% from downtown during the regular season. What you saw in game number 2 was them be able to defend the 3-point line extremely well. The Clippers are only going just 8 of 30 from downtown in game 2 for just 26% from the field. Overall, they shot 36.8% from the field overall. So getting out to shooters, closing out, making the rotation, but most importantly, taking their individual assignments and guarding one-on-one. And Tyronn Lue talked about that on Thursday as well. the fact that Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving guarded one-on-one, which allowed them to be much more aggressive on that end and really allow the shot blockers when it comes to Daniel Gafford, who obviously didn't play much in game 2, especially in the second half, but more importantly for Derek Lively to be able to help clean up on the back end. When your guys are taking the individual assignments on the defensive end and committing to that and executing on that end, it just makes it that much better for everyone else in terms of their help defense to be able to stay home and be able to help out on that end of the floor. But that is one thing that you have to continue to hope for going into games 3 and 4, is that how personal Luka and Kyrie took their assignments on the defensive end and were able to make sure that that happened. And obviously on the offensive end, for the Mavericks, it's going to be huge that they continue to knock down shots from the outside. They went 14 of 33 from the three-point line. And, of course, P.J. Washington is going to be a big part of that, as you could see, working with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in practice on Thursday as they get ready for game number 3 on Friday. His ability to continue to make the Clippers pay defensively from the three-point line is going to be absolutely huge. You look at what P.J. Washington did, of course, in game number 2, went 3 of 4 from downtown, had the 18 points. Luka, of course, had the big fourth quarter as well, had that dagger 3 that put him up by 9 with a minute and a half left in game 2. The Mavericks' ability to make the Clippers pay by knocking down threes is going to be massive, whether it's obviously led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, but more importantly from the others in terms of P.J. Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., Maxi Kleber, who had a big 3 also in game 2. Those are going to have to be the guys that help Luka and Kyrie out from an offensive standpoint. No Tim Hardaway going into game 3, so you're going to miss his outside shooting, which you say, Kevin, you really haven't seen much of anyway throughout the course of the playoffs in the first couple of games and really down the stretch for the Mavericks. But again, it's going to be about the others in this game in game 3. You'll see much more of Josh Green. Josh Green played 14 minutes in game 2. I expect to see more of him as well as he continues to make his presence known in this series. So for the Mavericks, defending the three-point shot the way that they did against the Clippers in game 2, as I mentioned, holding them to 26% from downtown, but conversely on the other end, continuing to make threes as well. When they went 14 of 33 for 42% from 3, did the Mavericks, because we know that this team at the early part of the year was bombing away from the three-point line, making a ton of threes. They remade themselves in terms of their team identity during the second half, becoming a much more physical and defensive rebounding team, as defensive team and rebounding team as well. But they still have got to knock down shots to keep the Clippers honest, to ensure that they're commanding the respect of the Clippers defenders. That just opens up that many more things for Luka and Kyrie in terms of driving lanes. You look at what the Mavericks did overall from a shooting standpoint, wasn't great from the field overall. In fact, shot 42.1% from the field overall. In fact, shooting just 41% from the 2-point range. They actually shot better from 3 than they did in their 2s in game 2. Again, that just gives you an indication where the Mavericks were that much better, as they were able to make 6 more 3-pointers than the Clippers. So the ability to defend, and obviously the point of attack when it comes to James Harden as a ball handler, whether it be Luka, whether it be Kyrie, taking on that defensive assignment and making sure that you're not allowing James Harden to create and facilitate offense for Kawhi Leonard and for Paul George and others. And then on the offensive end, continuing to knock down shots from the outside, particularly from 3, to really be able to put pressure on the Clippers to have to respect what you're doing from an offensive standpoint. Another point that I'm sure that you and I will be looking for in game 3, give this crowd a reason to stay in it early. I cannot forget, of course, what happened in the 2021 playoffs, where the Mavericks got up 2-0. They had done the hard part, won the first 2 games of the series in Los Angeles. They come back to the American Airlines Center, absolutely raucous. I should remember, because that was my first playoff game that I had ever covered, was game 3 of that 2021 series, where the Mavericks raced out to a 30-11 lead. The crowd was jumping, the building was rocking, and it looked like the Mavericks could be on their way to putting the Clippers in an 0-3 hole. And then, of course, what happened? The Clippers walked them down and were able to come back and win that game and get themselves back into that series. The Mavericks from jump have got to continue to put the pedal to the metal on the Clippers. One thing that the Mavericks have done extremely well this year is play with pace. They were a top 10 pace team all season long. Continue to get out on the fast break and run and put the pressure on the Clippers to defend you in transition, whether it be knocking open threes down in transition or getting to the cup and getting fouls on the Clippers. That's one thing that you can do. I thought they did a really good job against Ivica Zubac in game 2, but most importantly for me, getting out in transition, running, and getting this crowd into it from the very beginning and putting the pressure on the Clippers. Because if you can, yes, we know the experience of Leonard. He's been there, been a finals MVP, been an NBA champion. Paul George has had plenty of playoff experience. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, a number of guys who have plenty of playoff experience. But what you have to do is give this crowd a reason to stay in it and remain in it throughout the course of the 48 minutes. And I think the Mavericks will be able to do so. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are going to lead the charge offensively. But we know what the saying is when it comes to the postseason. Your role players tend to play better at home. So I'm looking for P.J. Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., obviously for Josh Green, Maxi Kleber as well, where the rotations are going to be rather short for this team. Already going to be missing Tim Hardaway Jr., possibly missing Daniel Gafford as well for game 3. So their rotation is already going to be short. You saw that in game 2, how quickly Jason Kidd was getting his guys in and out to be able to try to steal minutes for rest, utilizing the timeouts, manipulating the clock a little bit to be able to get these guys some rest. It still led, of course, to Luka Doncic playing nearly 46 minutes and Kyrie Irving playing nearly 42 minutes in game 2. Those two are going to be counted on for the heavy minutes, of course, for this team as they lead the offensive charge. But for everyone else, they've got to be able to lock in, execute, and be able to not only hit shots from the outside, but also put pressure on the Clippers throughout the course of the game. And I think that's going to be a huge key for them when you're looking at some of the other things, some of the outside factors. Getting this crowd in it at the AAC and keeping them in it, I think, is going to be huge, because you do not want to give the Clippers any kind of confidence and momentum. Yes, there are going to be runs throughout the course of the game, as you always find in an NBA game, but the Mavericks are going to have to be the aggressors from the outset, not just defensively, but offensively as well, to really give themselves a chance to come out of game 3 with a win. Because look, as good as the Mavericks played defensively, they know that Kawhi Leonard now has had a chance to play. He's going to get a little bit more confident with that knee going forward for the rest of the series, and they have to be able to withstand the runs that the Clippers are going to provide, knowing how good they are on the offensive end as well, being one of the best shooting teams in the NBA. But if the Mavericks can continue to execute on the defensive end, knock down their threes, getting out and running in transition, and being able to put pressure on the Clippers in that area, I think they're going to give themselves a really good chance, especially with that home crowd. My X factor going into game 3 is going to be Dereck Lively II. If he's going to get the start, he has got to remain out of foul trouble and got to be able to defend without fouling. You've seen throughout the course of the first couple of games so far, he's been able to take on the challenge in dealing with some of these guys on the perimeter when it comes to James Harden and others. If he's going to be out there on the floor, he's got to remain on the floor, because he cannot get into foul trouble because of course, what's going on with the Mavericks big man situation moving forward. So if he can, it's going to be great for the Dallas Mavericks when it comes to Dereck Lively's availability, but he's got to stay out of foul trouble. Hopefully the Mavericks can find some of that vertical game, which has been eliminated a little bit so far in this series. You haven't seen a lot of the lobs and a lot of the alley-oop dunks so far in the first couple of games. If they're able, again, as part of getting out in transition, being able to finish with authority at the rim in the fast break, getting themselves some easy buckets, turning the Clippers over. You look at what they did in game number 2. The Mavericks were able to force 9 turnovers. They scored 13 points off those turnovers, but they turned the ball over 14 times. So you got to value the ball yourself on the offensive end, be able to turn the Clippers over on the defensive end, getting out in transition where you only had 10 fast break points against the Clippers in game 2. You say, Kevin, it's been a knockdown, drag-out series so far with physicality and tough play. Hasn't been a lot of opportunities for either one of these teams to really run and get out in transition. And definitely, having watched a couple of games, I definitely understand that. But if you're the Mavericks, That's one way to be able to get some easy buckets, to be able to settle guys in early on, to be able to help this team be able to withstand with what the Clippers are going to be bringing in the course of the 48 minutes of Game 3. But there's a lot to look forward to, of course, in Game 3 and what the Mavericks can potentially do. Because if you're able to go up 2-1 on the Clippers with Game 4 in your building on Sunday and really put the pressure on Los Angeles to have to win Game 4, you are going to be in a prime position to play loose, play with confidence. And as you've seen in the practice footage there, this is a loose group. When I was observing practice on Thursday, this team was having fun, a lot of smiles, a lot of confidence in that room because they know that the chemistry that they've been able to build during the second half of the year has continued to play itself out, even in the struggles in Game 1 in the first half, not letting go of the rope, continuing to play and allow the game to come to them. They were able to build the confidence during the second half that carried over into game number 2, and you saw how well and how they were able to execute, especially on the defensive end. That will have to continue going into Game 3 because they're going to have to lean on their defense. This is not a great shooting team. As much as we talked about the idea of them having to knock down three-pointers from the outside, right now, this is not a great shooting team. You saw some of that during the second half of the year as they even were on that 16-2 run. There were times where they were able to knock down a lot of threes. You think about what they did against Sacramento in the first of those 2 games on the road, where they're able to beat Sacramento both times, what they did against Houston, obviously, and ending their 11-game winning streak. They have the capabilities of knocking down a bunch of threes, but this team is leaning, yes, Mavericks fans, on their defense to win them games, and then with the offense that Luka and Kyrie provides, and if PJ Washington can be that third guy, because he's going to have to be that third guy. What you saw in Game 2 is an example of what he's going to have to be forward for the rest of this series, going 5 of 10 from the field, efficient in terms of his overall field goal percentage, shooting 50%, going 3 of 4 from downtown with the 18 points, having 6 rebounds, doing a little bit of everything, had a couple of block shots, had a steal. PJ Washington's got to be the Swiss Army knife for this Mavericks team on both ends of the floor, and a lot is going to be asked of him throughout the course of this series. But this is why the Mavericks acquired a guy like PJ Washington, because they felt that he had the capabilities and the talent to be able to do it on both ends of the floor. And that confidence after what he did in Game 2 should only continue to grow more. And now playing comfortable at home, he should be a huge factor going into game number 3. So on the defensive end, it's about containing James Harden as the X factor and the facilitator and what he does for them, obviously in tandem with what Kawhi Leonard and Paul George bring from an offensive standpoint. But PJ Washington continues to remain my X factor on the offensive end. Can he continue to provide consistency from the three-point line, as well as how well he's been doing on the defensive end, to be everything as that third guy for the Mavericks alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and what they're going to provide to you offensively, and surprisingly, what they've done on the defensive end. And the last thing I'll get into before we get out of here on this episode of Inside the Mavs is the leadership of Luka Doncic. I encourage you to read Tim Cato's latest piece in The Athletic, detailing not just the defense that Luka Doncic has been playing, but the leadership that he continues to display. Kyrie Irving talking about it during this series. Luka Doncic leaves the rah-rah stuff to Kyrie Irving, but you're seeing Luka leading by example and learning how to help his teammates be able to withstand the rigors of the postseason, but also a really cool moment where he was able to hug Maxi Kleber after, of course, Maxi got the big offensive rebound to get it to Kyrie Irving, where he was able to knock down both free throws to have the Mavericks up by 6 with 7 seconds to go in game number 2. Understanding that at one point, Kyrie had gotten into it with Maxi in terms of yelling at him because he didn't necessarily catch a pass that he had thrown to him, but understanding in that moment, celebrating what Maxi did. That is the kind of leadership that Luka Doncic is learning how to display, and doing so much better these days in the postseason. And you saw that come out in game number 2. So his leadership and his defense and leading by example in those areas is huge for this Mavericks team, because as he goes on both ends of the floor, the Mavericks will go in this postseason, and what that means for their chances to beat the Clippers starting in game 3 on Friday, and then looking to do the same in game 4 on Sunday. So for the Mavericks, It's about their leadership from their superstars and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving leading with their defense, talking and communicating, but then on the other end, making sure other guys are getting involved, and for PJ Washington being that guy who's going to be the number 3 option for this team as far as his offense is concerned, and how he can continue to build off of his momentum going into game 3. It should be one hell of a basketball game, as it's been a slugfest so far in the first 2 games of the series between the Mavericks and the Clippers as they get ready for game 3 on Friday. Friday night, we'll have game 3 with a 7 o'clock tip-off. I'll have the pregame show on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network beginning at 6:30. And, of course, game number 4 will be on Sunday afternoon. Appreciate you joining me here for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you like and comment on the video. Give me a vibe check. Let me know how you're feeling about the Mavericks right now going into game 3. Of course, I'll have my breakdowns and game recaps after each and every game this postseason for the Dallas Mavericks right here on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, and, of course, on the podcast for Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. Like and comment on the video and subscribe to my channel here at Kevin Gray Sports. Until then, we'll talk to you later here on Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. My name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host. I'll talk to you later. Peace.